What do some people seem to always achieve their goals, whereas some people never do? Find out today on the Richard Neese Podcast. We believe in all the F words: faith, family, football, and fitness. Check us out on the Richard Neese Podcast every Saturday morning on WKUL. Hey everybody, Richard Neese here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Richard Neese Podcast. And as always, I have my compadre, Dominic Gill.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Richard Neese Podcast. Remember, we just started the new YouTube channel, TikToks, whatever. So if you could do us a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow this thing out. We're trying to educate people. We're trying to help people get to a better place. So if you can help us achieve that goal by giving us something for free, smash it, subscribe, and we'd be happy to help you on our growth journey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dom.
I might have said that backwards, but either way.
That's all right. So helping good people get to a better place has been our slogan for a long time. It's not just a slogan, it's the way that we live. We started that when I was basically a newbie real estate agent. Our goal was to help people find homes, but it stretched out to more than that. I mean, it was helping them find rentals, it was helping them in business, it was helping them grow their personal life, helping them become better people as a whole. Personal development was huge for us. So helping good people get to a better place really sums that up. And one of the things that we were kind of talking about early on, actually right before the show, we were just talking about our education system and different ways of learning and how people are connected in different ways and how they pick up things. And it always brings us back to one of my favorite topics, which is goal setting. I know Dominic could probably write pages on the conversations we've had about goal setting, good or bad. There's pages and pages we could write on them. Dom, it's that time of year, everybody's starting to set goals. What are your thoughts? You got some big goals for this year?
Got a few. I still have to go and articulate them and get them down into actionable steps. That's kind of one of the big things I'm sure we're about to talk about.
Sure.
Is breaking goals down from the big picture. But yeah, I'm kind of working on the big picture goals for 2025, and then breaking that down into the smaller steps that are achievable on a smaller scale. And that's, to me, that's my biggest trick on achieving goals.
So writing down goals are important. As we talked about in the intro, why do some people succeed when other people don't? A lot of times it's because they aren't setting goals, they aren't following up on their goals, they don't have that sheet of paper that says, this is my action step to get there. And I think action steps are probably the biggest part of goal setting. We can lay out whatever we want. I may set a goal that's a 12-month goal, a 2-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 1-week goal, but it's never just one step. It's always 5, 6, 8 steps. It's small wins throughout that really build up your momentum. I talked about that a little bit on my Facebook page yesterday about momentum. Sometimes momentum goes to the wayside. You're in a bad spot, and those small action steps will get you to that point where you're building momentum again. You're hitting those goals, and those milestones are important because if I'm trying to get to $1 million, I'm probably going to count about every $80,000 to $100,000, see how long that took. And that's going to help me project out how long it's going to take me to get to that $1 million.
Absolutely. So it always raises the question. We could always break down the easy stuff that we all know. So let me ask you this. What is your biggest challenge when it comes down to setting a goal? What do you struggle with the most?
So that's kind of a loaded question overall.
Just one. If you could sum it up in one way, what would you say would be the biggest
for setting goals in particular,
or in a goal setting system? What's your biggest challenge that you run across?
So my biggest challenge is not setting the goal big enough. A lot of times, what I'll do is I set something that I see as being reasonable and attainable, and then 6 months or 50% of the time frame gets in, and I'm like, holy cow, I hit that goal. Now what? And then I spend half a year, half of a time frame kind of wondering. And sometimes I actually regress on my goals because I hit it. And now it's like, okay, do I need to move the goalpost back? Should I be happy with this? I get into that limbo of what is enough, or is there ever enough?
Right. See, I kind of set the opposite expectation. Is whenever I start going into it, I get halfway through the first quarter. So sometimes mid-February, I'm like, okay, I may have been a little overambitious in this as I start going through and tackling some of these problems. And so then I have to adjust that goalposts in the other direction,
right,
and scaling it to a realistic expectation just to save myself from disappointment.
I understand that.
So, I mean, I know it's not the best way to go about things. At the end of the day, I'm still a lot closer to the goal for the end of the year, even though I have to change that goalpost again. But at the same time, I'm still way better off than where I was in January.
No, I agree with that.
So it's not something for me. I was like, I have to fight with the battle of not getting upset with myself about not seeing these goals being changed, but I have to go and accept the fact that, hey, I'm making progress.
Yeah.
I'm still getting better and better and getting to where I want to be, just not at the pace that I overambitiously set myself up for.
Sure.
So instead of looking at it like failure for myself, I try to look at it as a growth opportunity that I just have to go and reset my expectations.
So I think that, like I said, it was somewhat of a loaded question. When you look at it, typically my 12-month up to 12-month goal setting, I typically undershoot. It's attainable. I want to make sure I'm tracking towards that. If you look at 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, those typically are pretty big, hairy, and scary. But it's hard to tell other folks that. There's been several guys that I've watched on YouTube that say, don't tell your friends and family your big goals, because typically they'll pull you down, pull you away. They'll try and talk you out of it. But some big goals that I have, I kind of have them stored up inside. I'm working towards those things, but I don't really want to project them to the world yet. I'm still moving in that direction because I know that I've got to become that person that achieves those goals. And so those action steps may be, well, I've got to skill up in my accounting, or I've got to skill up in my ability to sell, or I've got to skill up on my social media presence. It's not necessarily an easy checkbox that says I need 1,000 subscribers.
Right.
It's really I've got to become the person that can achieve those big goals. I remember a part of Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's talking to an author, a writer, and I believe she's from the Philippines. He's discussing with her, and she is a very, very smart woman, great writer, all these things. And basically, she asked him, how do I become a best-selling author? And if you think about that, there's two parts of it. There's best-selling and there's author.
Right.
And she was a great author, but he suggested that she take a step back and work on her sales game. And she was offended by that because she thought, I'm an author. Why would I become a salesperson?
Right.
But surely that's what needed to happen. And needless to say, her books did not become best-selling because she didn't focus on the marketing side. All she was focused on was the best product. And you need both of those. So taking a step back and skilling up and understanding that you're not infallible, that you're not perfect, that you're not the greatest thing that ever happened to X industry, I think is important. And I try and do that on a monthly basis at a minimum. What chain length is broken and how can we get better?
No, I agree with that, but I will touch on what you started off at the beginning with was about, should you state your goals to other people or not? And I ran across a couple of interesting thoughts on that right there. One of them was when you speak something into existence to somebody else. For instance, I go up to my dad and I'm like, hey dad, this year I'm going to lose 40 pounds. And my dad's like, man, good for you. I've been telling you for a while that you need to lose weight. You definitely need to get this done. So I've received a small amount of gratification, a reward for something that was unearned. So I do see that that aspect of it all is where if you do speak something out loud, that you do receive some small gratification that can, for some people, unmotivate them to achieve that goal. And I guess for me is that what you need to do is study your patterns, because I fall into that camp. Camp. When I speak something out loud, I feel immediately gratified by speaking out these goals in public, and I receive a false reward for it, and then I don't take action. So I know you work the opposite. So to me, this is where I feel that you need to understand and study your past behaviors. What have you done in the past when you spoke it out into the world? Did you react the same way like me, to where it immediately, you felt that dopamine hit, that good feeling that you have in just speaking the goal out, and now you're not as motivated to achieve it because now it becomes hard, or because you've spoken to existence, now your pride's on the line. I'm assuming that's probably a big part of it for you, is like, hey, I said it. I'm not going to be a liar. I'm not going to go out there. I'm going to make sure that people see that I do what I say. Sure. So you got to understand with yourself, where do you fall in that category? And then I think you should act accordingly, because we all react differently to the way that we do things. And I know whenever I have whenever I have said that, hey, this year I'm going to lose 60 pounds. This year I'm going to lose 20 pounds. And the year I actually lost 60 pounds was the year I kept my mouth shut.
Yep.
I kept my mouth shut and I just started working. It was during COVID of all times. Everyone's eating more. I kind of felt like, you know what? Now's a good time. I'm at home. I don't have to go and worry about eating out as much. Yeah. Let me really focus on this right here. And I kept my mouth shut. And I kept that goal to myself. Next thing you know, people start walking up to me. It's like, man, what did you do? How'd you lose so much weight? What did you do? And so then I would tell them about what I did, and I would receive my dopamine reward from that. Sure. But I didn't go and tell them right after, yeah, man, I got 20 more pounds. I'm still trying to go. I'm down 60, but I'm trying to hit the next 20. So I think everyone reacts differently, because I know me and you, we both react completely differently in that regard. Because if I speak something out loud and I get the attaboys, you're going to get it done or whatever, I feel good about myself, and then I lose motivation. So
I actually totally 100% agree with what you just said. So I think that self-evaluation is important and understand what motivates you overall. I also agree with the fact that a lot of times when you speak it into existence on the front end, especially to an individual, you can have a negative effect.
Exactly.
To an individual is important. What I try and do, and I've done this probably all of my life, but in particular, I started thinking about when I'm on social media, when I'm on a podcast, when I'm doing whatever, it's really not about me getting attention for the thing. It's, can I actually help somebody or transform somebody's life by speaking that into existence? And so I think that for me, it is, if I speak it into existence for lots of people, great. I'm kind of owning it myself. If it's a one-to-one conversation, to me, that's not braggadocious or anything like that, but it's a different effect overall. To me, it almost, like when I talk about big goals I might have over a 12-month time frame, I say, hey, Dominic, I'm going to run a marathon in 2 hours. Like, it's either not realistic, like you can't actually imagine that, or you're like, why is this guy bragging about that? That's what I'm thinking about.
100%.
Like, I can't even.
It's like, great. Why do I care?
Exactly. So to me, an individual goal setting doesn't work as well. But speaking it into existence, because what I want to do is I want to pull somebody up out of their slump, and maybe they're not running a marathon. And I'm not running a 2-hour marathon, by the way.
Right.
Making an adjustment, but if I can help pull somebody out, and maybe they're not running a marathon, but they're going to do a couch to 5K and they're going to walk. Well, great. I hope that you pull something from our videos that allows you to say, I can do that. It's not something massive. I don't have to compare myself to somebody else in that sense. And that we probably need to talk about this at some point, maybe not in this episode, but the you versus you and you versus other people.
Right.
I think there's an argument from both ways. One of my good friends, Zach Gordon, he has an adamant view that it's always you versus other people, because that's what drives you as a man and as a hunter, a killer, somebody that has to own their territory. I would disagree in some cases. I like both perspectives. Depends on what you're trying to do overall. That's kind of where I would be. But getting back to the goal side, so I like to set my goals out in those increments. And then the key, and one thing that I wanted to mention, really the biggest topic was action. Take action, take action, take action. 10X, one of my companies is called 10X. But 10X is 10 times the amount of effort that you would have to do to achieve a goal that you expect. But taking action is the key to getting out of slumps. It's also the key to massive success. Now, people are going to say, well, you can do too much effort, work harder, not smarter, and all that stuff. Well, working harder doesn't necessarily equal productivity. Taking action can mean knocking on doors. It could also mean automating something. It can mean thinking about your actual problem and solving it that way in a smarter way. But taking action is the important part. What I see too often is, well, if I hit this amount of activity and it's just enough to get there, you're going to fall short because 15% of that's actually not going to work out. What are your thoughts on that, Dominic, as far as the action side? And I know you're an advocate of doing things automation-wise and working smarter. I'm kind of a knuckle dragger, and I go.
I am, but then I also know that whenever you start doing the work and you get yourself in that flow state of doing something, even if it's not, and again, this may be personal for me, but whenever I get into that flow state of actually working and doing the daily tasks of something, that I actually starts getting in the rhythm of creating more success and to propel me forward. So I'm very momentum based when it comes down to my activity. Even if that activity is not 100% the most productive, sometimes in the morning when I need that slow start, I'm not a morning person. So if I get that slow start again and I need that momentum, I'll start taking some momentum steps that I know that are easily achievable to propel me so that I can actually get through the rest of the tasks, so that I can start tackling the stuff that's more challenging, even though it may be automated, but even that automated takes some user inputs.
Absolutely.
So that's my take on it all, is that as long as it's not like unproductive steps, where you're doing something that's completely heading in the other direction, but you're creating activity,
I think we start looking at activity, and I tell this to folks all the time, is when you start feeling like you're hitting a plateau, you're not actually getting things done, you need to write down the things that you do on a daily basis related to whatever you're doing, whether that's fitness, business, whatever it is. And then you need to put them into columns. The first column is the things I like doing and that are productive. And then everything else should really be, can I automate it? Can I delegate it? Or can I delete it? Okay? If I can't do those things on the things I don't like doing, then you need to reevaluate the business structure as a whole and kind of work through that. So I think it's important on that side. To me, doing hard things, taking action, and then also being the light you want to see, right? So whether that's in community service, whether that's like Elon Musk and the rocket, the stuff that he's doing with rockets and reusable rockets, he said something that nobody thought was possible. And he said, you know what, just watch. I'll do it myself if nobody else wants to help me. I was watching a video the other day on YouTube, or I guess it might have been Netflix, it was a documentary where he had gone to Russia probably in the mid-2000s and was trying to buy missile designs from them, not national security stuff, but just missile designs, and they laughed him out of the room. And basically, he just came back and said, I'll make my own rockets. Right. Nobody wants to help me, I'll make my own. And it's important to have that mentality of, if you truly want something, you're going to have to go after it. And most times, it's not going to be easy. You have to do hard things. You have to step into situations where you're not comfortable. You have to learn, skill up, and all those things tie into your goals. Your goals shouldn't just be, well, I want to lose X pounds. Well, how about I want to lose X pounds, but I want to make it sustainable. Right. I want to change my eating style or my diet so that long-term sustainability is there, and not just I'm going to go on a diet. A diet is everything you eat, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Now, if you do a fad diet, that's something a little bit different. But if you look at how I eat food, I want to be healthier. It has to have longer lasting impact than just I'm going to lose weight. Otherwise, you're just going to gain it.
You have to change your lifestyle. It's a complete lifestyle change when it comes down to it. And again,
and that applies across the board, not just with food. I mean, with business.
That's the most visible one that you can see from somebody. And those that realize that it's a mental shift, and it's a mental shift you have to take in your mind in order to make that change. And again, it's a dedication to that lifestyle when it comes down to long-term sustainability. But you start off at the beginning with being incremental in your goal setting. Right. Give me some examples of how you handle, like, what are some, define what you mean by incremental, and how does that look when it comes down to setting a goal specifically for yourself?
So I'm going to be almost like a politician on this one, because there's a lot of different ways. My whole life is based around incremental improvements or incremental detriment, going in the other direction. Obviously, I don't want to go backwards and regress, but it does happen sometimes. So my diet. So in the last 90 days, actually 70 days, I've lost about 25, almost 30 pounds. Wow. I'm running more consistently. I'm rucking. I'm doing all these things, but I never go after something so hard that it makes me stop, or I rarely do that. What I do is incremental. So the first thing I did on the diet, I'm doing 75 hard, but my diet originally was, I was just going to do one helping. I did no sugar, as far as no sugar for sweet tea, and no desserts. I started that, and I was still eating pasta. I was still eating pizza. I was still eating all those things, but it was one helping. No and if or buts. It was one helping. So sometimes it get loaded up a little bit extra on the one helping, but I wasn't going back for a second. I lost 5-8 pounds. Then the next thing was, all right, I'm going to cut out pasta. And the next thing was, okay, now I'm going to go to a carnivore diet. And since then, I'm actually eating similar calorie count as I was before, probably 500 less a day, but I'm losing weight still, and my activity level has gone down since my original start of 75 hard. That's incremental. Incremental could also be, so Dominic and I, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we were doing more social media stuff just for real estate, and we decided to set up a social media calendar it's a weekly calendar. We didn't start off with 7 days worth of content. We started off with the real estate rundown, which was a video. Okay, so the first thing was First Look Friday, where I started putting out a post every Friday on new listings. And then it was Motivation Monday. And then we also had the Wednesday that came in. And then eventually we were doing 7 days worth of content every single week. And most of that stuff was
in one day, by the way. One day.
Most of that stuff was filmed in one day. Right. With the exception of the real estate rundown, which was a live show then. So building out that content calendar was important, but that's that's how you start incrementally at whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. Another thing, so there's a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I'll have to look up the author. I can't remember right off. But they talk about the whirlwind, which is your daily task, that are going to happen no matter what. That kids are going to call, they're going to get sick, you're going to have this, the wife's going to do this, the boss is going to do this. You know that's going to happen. But then having one WIG, which is a wildly important goal for the week or for the month. And that was just like the content calendar. It was pulling one thing incrementally. I'm going to do this a little bit better. I'm going to do this consistently. And before long, that one thing becomes part of the whirlwind. It's natural. You do it no matter what. And people ask me all the time about getting up at 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning running. I didn't do that to begin with. It was 5 o'clock on a Monday. That's all I wanted to do. And then eventually it's every day because that's part of your routine and your body's accustomed to that. It's just like weightlifting. It's just like running. Your body is used to these hard things, incrementally harder things. And so that's the important part about the incremental system. Does that answer your question, Dominic?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Roundabout, but
Yeah, no, it definitely does. That so in my mind, when you were talking about incremental, I was actually thinking that you were referring to goal timelines of like, I want to achieve this amount by a certain period, which is the way my mind works when it comes down to goal setting.
That's if you
and that's where I thought you were referring to.
Right.
But what you're saying makes sense in that incremental way. It was more about personal stressors in the regard of like how to go and increase the incrementals by stressing different parts and aspects of your body to gauge to increase your stress, not your stress level, but increase your resilience. There you go.
So, and it's the same thing, Dominic. It's just a different perspective on it because you said hit certain goals by certain times. Well, my goal was for 2 weeks, I'm only going to eat one plate.
Right.
That was my goal. So I hit that goal. So if you flip it around and had it from a perspective of goal setting for the year, it would be like, I'm only going to intake X amount of calories per year.
Right.
Instead of it being, I'm taking away the X things, it's I'm going to decrease calories to this point. And then the next thing was, okay, now I want to make healthier choices. And so the timeline stretched out the same way. It's just a micro version of that, as opposed to, like for me, typically I'll look at it from a monthly perspective. There's 12 opportunities to set goals. Some people look at it from quarters. To me, that's too long because it's really easy to get lost in the sauce in one quarter. Whereas if it's on a weekly or a monthly calendar, you can take control and say, hey, I fell behind, but I can still catch up. You get a quarter behind in a year, it's going to be tough to catch up. It's going to take almost everything you got, whether that's business, fitness, whatever it is. So it's something to really consider how quickly you have those battle rhythms. And I'm helping a guy right now start a new business, a cart business. And it's always important when I help guys or when I help people in general start businesses to have a battle rhythm. Every week we're going to meet and we're going to look over the finances. Every week we're going to meet, we're going to go over the marketing strategy. We're going to look at cash flow. We're going to look at things that nobody wants to talk about because, there wasn't much change, but there is change coming. And what that does is it allows you to have an anchor so that you don't float too far away.
Oh, makes sense. And again, yeah, so the way that I typically do it, and maybe the wrong way of doing it, is that I look big. So I go and I do annual goal. This is like what I want to have to achieve. Then I break that down into quarters. Then I break it down into months. Then I break it down into weeks. Like I need to achieve this much. And even try to go break it down to a daily, and I use the reference of 1% a day makes you 365% better by the end of the year. But you have to measure what that is to make that actually work. So what does 1% daily look like for me in my life? It's like, well, 1% better is what? 1% extra effort, then you have to reevaluate the next day what 1% is. I mean, again, it gets it sounds good when you speak it out, whenever you say it.
Yeah.
But you have to have a realistic, what does that look like 1% better every day? Whereas, like you said, you break it down in months or you break it down into weeks, it's a lot more achievable because now you can actually gauge what does that look like on a weekly improvement versus a daily improvement. Because if you're setting up yourself for a daily, at least for me, when I set myself up for daily improvement, daily goals of like improvement every day, you're setting yourself up. I'm setting myself up for failure because I'm constantly never getting that sense of satisfaction, and you're opening yourself up to a lot more disappointment on a daily basis. And again, as you know, as I do, I'm not going to shame to say this, I am one of those people that really, really, really struggle with imposter syndrome. You know that very well. So for me, little setbacks is a big setback.
Well, there's two sides of that, Dominic, though. You can fail every day, but you also get to reset the scorecard every day.
Exactly.
So, and building in those small wins are important. When you're talking about action steps, so going back to the 4 disciplines of execution, it talks about lead measures versus lag measures.
Right.
And so the things I'm talking about as far as weight loss and things like that, those are lag measures. The lead measures are just like you're saying. I'm going to make sure that I make one healthy choice for breakfast today. So that's so ingrained in me. I see it as lead and lag. And so they're the same to me. But most of the time, what you would want to do, like with my sales business on real estate sales, what I used to do is I used to break it down into how many transactions or how many families I want to help by the end of the year. And then I would break it down to, okay, I know that this month is typically slower. This month is typically better. And so I would break it down. January, I'm going to have 3 sales. This July, I'm going to have 15 sales, whatever that number is. And then I break it down to what an actual sale consists of. Well, typically my conversion ratio on cold calls is this. So in order to have 15 sales for the year from cold calls, I need 250 phone calls. Open houses, I need to have 26 open houses for the year in order to convert 18 sales. And so I put a number to each activity, and then I say, if I do enough of these activities, then I will make sure I get my sales. And that then it starts talking about the 1% better, conversion tracking. There's a lot to that, but just on the basis, it's setting up some sort of lead measures, which are the things that I have to do in order to get the things that I want. I have to run in order to get faster. I'm not going to get faster. Or, another way would be I have to run or I have to lose weight first. And then I'll
Right.
all of that stuff are their lead measures that convert to the lag measures, which end up being your goals and where you get to. Does that make any sense?
No, it does. It does. It makes me think about the things that I do that's,
Stuff.
that are incorrect, first of all. I'm not saying that I'm like, oh yeah, this is better at all. I'm saying the opposite. Basically, it's like, well, before I can go and run a mile, I need to lose weight first. In order for me to lose weight first, I have to run a mile. So you get yourself in this paradox of a thought process.
Sure.
And then you get stuck. And then for me, I get stuck in a place of inaction, almost like an analysis by paralysis, by overthinking the process too much instead of simply doing it.
Yeah.
And so, and again, I'm not speaking to you at all. I'm speaking a self-reflection right now.
There's
Is that
gotta be some honesty there too.
Yeah.
Like, to lose weight, you don't have to walk. You can change your diet. And then you said, I want to run a mile. Well, can I walk a mile?
Right.
Can I walk a
Exactly.
quarter of a
Exactly.
mile?
Exactly.
And to me, that's where you start looking at those lead measures. When you start saying, I want to run a mile in 10 minutes. Well, the lead measure on that is, how about I just walk a mile every day?
Right.
And so you just break it down to even smaller goals. Or I want to sprint 100 yards. Or I want a 10-minute pace 100 yards.
Right.
And then you, just like the incremental discussion that we had, you slowly build that resiliency up. And then eventually your body says, yes, I can do this to a certain extent. Obviously, at 5'8", I'm probably not going to be putting my elbow in the rim, jumping on a dunk. But
Right.
there are some things I can do to increase my vertical to get to a better capacity overall.
Right. Might make a more comfortable layup.
That's right. So I might be able to grab the rim again or something of that nature.
Right.
But in reality, I'm not going to do a Vince Carter dunk where I stick my elbow down the rim. It's just not going to happen.
No.
So those are some good things for as far as goal setting goes. I always want to get back to being the light that you want to see. So if you, we were talking about the school systems, a few other things before the show with Ron Mosley Jr. here at WKUL. And what I hate hearing is I hate hearing people say, well, we need to change this and we need to change that and we need to do this. Stop saying we need to do something and take part in it. If you want to have something done, then you need to be a part of a committee. You need to be a teacher. You need to run for a position on the board. You need to run for a political office. You need to do something and put up or shut up is kind of where I'm at. I'm tired of seeing people talk about, well, there's too much trash on the streets, or there's this, or there's that. Well, there's something that you can do to make a difference right now if that's important. To me, it's the same thing as voting. If you're not going to vote, then I don't want to hear your opinion on the politics. You deal with this, because if you're old enough and you're able to, vote for somebody or shut up. That's where I'm at. I don't care if you disagree with me, agree with me, whatever it is. That's where you need to be at, is be a part of the difference.
And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out when you're talking about trash, and I'm going to use this metaphorically. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and clean up all the streets. Start with your front yard.
Absolutely.
Start with your front yard. Start with your car. Start with your bedrooms.
Yes.
Start cleaning up the parts of your life that affects you directly first, and then expand out and make a difference outside of that. Because if you're cleaning up your neighbor's yard or the street down the road because it's a trash heap, but yours still looks like trash, you're not really benefiting yourself at all. So instead of, again, you should be concerned with what's good for the public too. I'm not saying that, But before you start going down that road, make sure that you are taking care of what's going to take care of you, because that's going to sustain long term for the public as well. So it works hand in hand. It works hand in
Give you
hand.
less time to complain too.
Right,
Because if
absolutely.
you're actually cleaning your house, you're not going to be talking to me about the neighbor's yard being trashed. And that's what that kind of comes down to. But I think we're getting kind of close on time. We're kind of wrapping things up. The biggest takeaways from me on this show is to do hard things, to take action, to set goals, and to be the light that you want to see. If you do those things for 2025, you'll be in a great place. You'll be a better person you were before. If you keep listening to our podcast, you're going to pick up on things that we do. We all fall short of the glory of the Lord. We all are going to come up short in different areas of our life. The key to our podcast is to help you become better. We want to help good people get to a better place, and we believe that you are good people. Dom, you got anything else to say?
I'm good.
All right, you guys have a great week. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow us on social media. We want to put out the message of helping good people get to a better place.